morning, everybody. Driving into work. A little bit behind this morning. Anyway, Tina had asked me to do a vlog about goals and setting goals. Now, I'm going to tell you on the front end, this isn't a negative statement, it's just fact, that expectation is kind of the seed of frustration and disappointment. For many of you that have competed, you hit that first meet, and then you start your new training cycle, and like Joe is experiencing, when you look at the programming and things are like 10, 15, and 20 below your best, and those weights don't feel easy, and that immediately starts the wheels turning and your head spinning into thinking something is wrong. Well, it's completely natural. There's a reason why that I program those numbers down, but that is a different conversation and something that we'll cover another time. But goals are that dangling carrot, so to speak, and it's something to work towards. And I always tell people to set short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And even if you're someone that's new and like you've competed, and you can see that you're going down a path where a couple of times a year at a minimum you're going to compete, and you want to see how far you can take this. Doesn't matter if you just want to be the local champ or state champ or world champion. You just want to see how far you can push yourself. So the first thing that I try to do with the short-term goal, that's basically a training cycle. And to be as conservative and realistic as you can be within reason. Medium term, I like a 6-month goal, 9-month goal. That's medium term. Long term, probably an 18-month goal. And then keeping those other two facets, keeping them within the realm of realism, something that's conservative. Now, for that ultimate goal, that's where you shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars. And there's a reason for this method. And what I try to do with the short-term goals, especially being conservative, is that one, makes them obtainable. Now, that's not taking the easy way out, but it gives you an idea and a sense of realism if those goals are met fairly easily. And in the beginning, a lot of times they are. And you'll see as you get more involved in the sport or competing and training that those gains, they taper off. And that's not a bad thing. That's life. That's how it goes. As you get really, really good and those numbers go up, especially, like someone like, again, Jennifer is a great example. At Worlds, she hit a world record total. It was a quick turnaround to Nationals, and that was a really tough run getting to Worlds. Now, she did great, go to Nationals last year. Not only does she win her class, she gets best lifter. She does well at the Arnold Grand Prix Pro and hits some PRs and a PR total. And then she goes to Worlds, breaks the squat world record, the total world record, had the world record deadlift in hand, and it was turned down 2-1, and gets best lifter. And then you got a reset after the whirlwind of the Worlds and get ready for Nationals again. So she goes 8 for 9 and hits a 1 kilo PR total. Now she gets the American record deadlift and, that sort of thing. So, but by and large, when you look at Jennifer in that situation, you're like, but she won Nationals. So you see, that's all about perspective. So, but Jennifer trained that entire training cycle, and ultimately the end result, regardless of the circumstances, it's a 1 kilo PR total. And it was only going to be a half a kilo until I was able to chip it for another half kilo on the American record deadlift. So you kind of see, when you get to the top end of the game, those gains come difficult. But for many of you, you're at a beginner to an intermediate level, and I like those goals to be obtainable, because those things, momentum begets momentum. And you start learning after you do a couple of training cycles where you have those short-term goals, how to create momentum. And you'll go, well, I hit 15 more on the bench press than I had originally set. Let me look at this again realistically, and if I do my work, if I improve upon the things that I need to work on, maybe this is a bit more realistic number and I can be more aggressive. The ultimate thing is that you learn what your capacities are, and you learn in that point in time what is required of you to reach those medium-term goals, and that yet begets working and staying, grinding sometimes. It doesn't always have to be a grind, and it shouldn't always be a grind. But we've had where there's the chart is never just this steady increase in number, which is what a lot of people expect. There's going to be some ebb and flow, and when it ebbs, that's when you got to hunker down and get the work done. And that's what those medium and long-term goals, you learn about yourself, what your capacity is to push in those circumstances to get through whatever the case may be. Sometimes you have a tough run in training, or life is stressful, or relationships, or right now is a perfect example. We're in the midst of the holidays, and man, we have such expectation. Again, me telling you, expectation can breed disappointment and frustration. For our loved ones and people that are close to us, we throw a New Year's Eve party every year, and it seems like every year you spend more and more money, and if you're like me, you work really hard and just to have a little bit. So there's all this seems to really mount up this time of year. The weather for a lot of us is cold. It's cold here, and the days sometimes are gloomy, and all those things are a factor. That being said, these are the times that it's most paramount that you dig in, where you have an opportunity to learn about training through the ups and downs, where you can achieve those goals, because those goals are yours. They're important to you, and you keep learning about, this is the amount of work that I have to do to reach the short-term goal, and if I reach that short-term goal, that puts me this many steps closer to my medium-term goal, and so forth. And you start learning even more about that big, giant, all-time goal. What do I have to do? You start learning what I have to do to make that happen. I'll use myself as an example. When I first started powerlifting and thought, I'm okay at this, I'm pretty good, I wanted to squat 800, bench 500, and deadlift 700. And coming out of the gate, it looked like the 700-pound deadlift would be the one that I would achieve first. Turns out it was not that way. I readily eclipsed 500 and 800, but that, when I started, getting a 2,000-pound total was my goal. And I learned, if I did a certain work capacity, certain workload, and I paid attention to my food and my supplements, and studied, did all the things that I had to do, that generally I would come well within reach of, I'd either hit the goals or be really close. And I remained consistent, and when I eclipsed those lifts, then I reset my ultimate goal to totaling 2,400. I wanted to squat 1,000, bench 7, and at that time I still had not deadlifted 700 pounds. And I've told many of you this story before. I did novice nationals in 1999 with the Federation and deadlifted 584 with room to spare. I changed nothing about my training and went back to it to start the process. I really wanted to deadlift 600 pounds, and at the time my goal, my immediate goal, was to total 1,600. Well, that was December of 99. and I trained hard. I didn't take time off. I didn't, do things. I didn't take the easy way out, and I studied, and I felt like I did everything right. But I chased the number so hard, and again, that's something you should listen to some of the things that Jennifer has written about chasing the number. But we'll get into that another time as well. Ultimately, I believe it was July or August of 2001 that I finally broke the 600-pound deadlift. I cannot tell you how many times in a meet, how many times in training I missed that number. Now, I can go back and tell you some mistakes I made, that contributed to that, but ultimately, the deadlift was my albatross, and I had to work at it and figure it out. And while I had a goal, and that created expectation, I had a lot of frustration with when everything was ebbing and not going my way. I stayed the course. There were times where I had nicks and scrapes and tweaks, and ultimately, because it was important enough to me and it was a priority, I figured out a way to train around it and to keep digging and keep learning and getting better until I achieved my goal. And I reset my goal. Like I tell many of you, it became my new point A, and I dug in, and the things that I learned to get to that point, I applied, and quickly within the next, it wasn't 3 or 4 months later that I deadlifted 625 pounds. So these are the things about setting goals. To review, because I'm long-winded, I always have short-term goals, and for those of you that compete, that short-term goal ends at the meet. For others that are training and just trying to get better and haven't yet competed, it's your training cycle. And then the medium term, I always like to look at 6 to 9 months. It can be a year, and then your long-term goal can be 18 months to 36 months. And then ultimately, what do you want to achieve? Is it a 300-pound deadlift, a 200-pound bench, or you want to, be as strong as you possibly can? Whatever the case may be, then that's the one that you shoot for the moon. So hopefully all those things make sense, and I'd love for these things to create more dialogue and conversation, because I'm doing this on the fly while I drive, and there may be questions that I could answer, or just things that you glean from this that take conversation and debate to a different area. So I'll post this here in a little bit,